Michael is hosting the annual Dundies, which is sort of like the Oscars for The Office, where everybody gets made fun of and people get unhappy.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine.
Michael does a bunch of shitty jokes and some borderline racist ones as well.
Hello, everybody!
And nobody's having a good time. Pam gets into a fight with Roy and decides to get wildly drunk. Some of the other patrons have had enough of Michael and decide to heckle and throw stuff at him. Michael is visibly shaken and decides to cut the party short. That is until drunk Pam cheers him on for more and the office surprisingly backs her. The party goes on and ends on a good note. Pam is getting a ride home from Angela, but before she goes, she asks Jim a question. We're introduced to Todd Packer, Michael's total BFF. Let's just say he and Michael talk and behave very inappropriately around the office. Toby, the office's HR, decides to sit Michael down and review the office's sexual harassment policy. Michael doesn't like Toby at all.
Toby is in HR, which technically means he works for corporate, so he's really not a part of our family.
Michael is unhappy about the apparent lack of free speech, and Jen from corporate is forced to come down and talk to him. Michael begrudgingly announces to the office that they should exude more appropriate behavior around the workplace. This also gives us this iconic scene.
Always left me satisfied and smiling, so...
That's what she said!
Michael is out of the office to close a deal for a condo. One microphone cameo later, Jim is very bored out of his mind and mingles around the office trying to just find things to do, mostly games to play. Jim gets an idea to have an office Olympics where they all compete in arbitrary games to win medals made out of paper clips and yogurt lids. Meanwhile, as Michael gushes about his new soon-to-be home, he mistakenly believes that his mortgage was 10 years when in actuality it's 30 years, which Dwight so gently puts.
Wow, you'll be paying this off in your mid-70s.
Michael attempts to walk away from the deal, but...
You will lose $7,000 if you walk away right now.
So he signs for the condo. Back at the office, everyone is in the middle of a game when Michael and Dwight walk back in, putting an abrupt end to the games. Jim, however, decides to still hold the closing medal ceremony but instead disguises it as a congratulations ceremony for Michael, closing the deal on his condo. Michael is moved to tears because of the sentiment, or probably because of his 30-year mortgage. Michael is evaluating Ryan the Temp's performance when a fire breaks out and the alarm triggers, causing everyone to evacuate the building. As the fire department responds, Jim decides to play games like Who'd You Do and movies to take to a desert island. Michael, meanwhile, is having an awkward one-to-one conversation with Ryan, which makes Dwight very jealous. The office is still playing Who'd You Do and...
It's called Who'd You Do?
Oh, well, I would definitely have sex with Ryan.
What did he say?
What the fuck? In a last-ditch attempt to impress Michael, Dwight rushes into the burning building to retrieve Michael's cell phone, which he left. Or at least he thought he left until he realized that it was in his pocket the whole time. Dwight comes out weirdly excited for some reason and reveals a burnt piece of pita bread he found in the toaster, which apparently belonged to Ryan. Michael and Dwight absolutely let him have it.
Ryan started the fire! It was always burning everybody!
Jim's girlfriend Katie passes by to pick him up and Michael is back to being his old arrogant self.
North Korea, South Korea, Marilyn Monroe. Ryan started the fire!
It's Halloween and everyone is all dressed up for the occasion. Michael has 2 heads, Jim is a 3-hole punched version of himself, Dwight is a Sith Lord, Oscar is a woman, Kevin is Mr. Incredible, Kelly is Dorothy, Pam, Phyllis and Angela are all cats, and Stanley is... Stanley. Michael has the unfortunate task of firing someone by the end of the day and he is very troubled in having to do so. He first asks Dwight what he should do in a rather hilarious exchange.
What? No, Michael, not me.
What? Are you kidding?
Quiet, you!
He then asks Jim to practice his firing skills with him. Jim will pretend to be Michael, firing another employee.
It's purely budgetary. It's not personal.
I'm gonna kill myself!
Wow.
Michael finally decides to fire Creed and brings him into the office. However, Creed manages to talk Michael out of firing him and gets him to fire another guy. Pam needs Michael to sign some important forms by the end of the day, but Michael is procrastinating. Meanwhile, we find that Dwight has been learning Goju Ryu Karate? Did I say that right? Goju Ryu Karate, and has been recently promoted to a purple belt in a class full of kids. While Jim and Dwight are talking, Michael walks in on their conversation and makes a small remark on how he could kick Dwight's ass in a real fight. Michael goads Dwight into punching him and... Now with his ego bruised, Michael challenges Dwight to a sort of a formal fight in Dwight's dojo at lunchtime, with the whole office coming to watch. Jim and Pam are flirting with each other until Pam notices Meredith looking at them. Pam tells Jim to put her down and she gives him the cold shoulder. Jeez. Michael wins the fight, I think. Back at the office, Dwight is visibly dejected by the loss. Michael basically tells the office to forge his signatures for the forms. Michael decides to cheer him up by promoting Dwight from assistant to the regional manager to assistant regional manager. Jim goes home for the weekend, but not before leaving Pam a small gift. Jan from corporate is trying to land a big client for Dunder Mifflin and needs Michael's help. Another microphone cameo later, Michael and Jan leave to meet the new client. Pam finds a screenplay for a movie called Threat Level Midnight and tells Jim, to which he has a brilliant idea. Back at Chili's, Jan tries to talk business with the client, but Michael keeps interrupting her with jokes and silly antics.
I want my baby back, baby back, baby back. I want my baby back, baby back, baby back. I want my
baby back ribs.
Back at the office, everyone has a table read of Michael's screenplay, and Pam tells her fiancé Roy that she needs to work late tonight. Michael has still hijacked the meeting by talking to the client about anything but business.
And truth or dare, tell us about your divorce. Ooh.
Oh no,
Ew.
Michael.
But in a turn of events, seals the deal with him, much to the delighted surprise of Jan. Jan are elated that they secured the client and they share a kiss. Then they immediately drive off somewhere together. Back at the office, Pam and Jim have an impromptu date on the rooftop of the office as they watch Dwight and Kevin play with some fireworks. The next morning, Dwight sees Jan come back for her car and immediately puts together that she and Michael spent the night together. Michael gets a call from Jan with her seemingly trying to dismiss their night together as a sort of mistake, while Jim tries to ask Pam if what they had last night could be considered a date, which Pam dismisses it as nothing more than just friends hanging out. Yikes. Michael needs to conduct performance reviews for all his employees, but all he can think about is his night with Jan and why she vehemently refuses to acknowledge him. Rumors about Michael and Jan spread around the office and everyone is anticipating Jan's visit, especially Kevin.
Could you please tell Michael that I'm here?
Meanwhile, Jim catches Dwight thinking that the next day is Saturday when in fact it's a Friday.
But tomorrow you mean Saturday, right?
Duh.
He sheepishly devises a plan to keep Dwight thinking that. Jan arrives and Michael is immediately very awkward with her. During a meeting, the word about Michael and Jan's sexcapade gets publicly revealed and she leaves. But not before telling Michael he's a great looking guy, with the only problem being his entire personality. Of course, Michael doesn't hear anything Jan has to say except that he's good looking, and this makes him super content. The episode ends with Dwight missing work because he really believed it was a Saturday.
Over here. It's okay.
Michael is conducting email surveillance on the entire office for some reason. Pam overhears Dwight sneakily telling Angela to delete any sensitive emails. Jim is also hosting a barbecue at his place, but the problem is he didn't invite Michael. Throughout the day, Michael constantly inserts himself in gatherings in the hopes that he can be invited to the party. Everyone goes to the party while Michael goes for improv class.
You start us off, Mary Beth.
La 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 la.
Boom! Detective Michael's card.
Pam and Jim share a moment in his bedroom, and Michael is also disinvited by his improv class. He decides to crash the party anyway, but in a surprising turn of events, Jim doesn't kick him out but welcomes him and sings with him. We end the episode with Dwight and Angela doing some dirty business. It's Christmas time and the office are having Secret Santa. Jim coincidentally gets Pam as his Secret Santa and gets her a teapot full of their inside jokes between the pair and even a handwritten letter of how he truly feels about her. The game begins and at first all is going well. Pam receives her teapot, Jim gets a pullover from Creed's closet, Ryan even gets a $400 iPod. Yeah, this was 2006. This was a big deal back in the day.
Oh, wow.
Michael then receives his gift from Phyllis, a handmade oven mitt, which he's very unhappy about. This incites Michael to completely change the rules of the game. Now, participants can steal gifts from other people and this naturally ruins the nature of the game, as gifts meant for specific people are now given to other people. The iPod is consecutively stolen until it ends up with Pam, with the others receiving gifts they don't want. Michael also lets slip that he got an end of year bonus check, which really upsets everyone.
You got a bonus check.
How much?
3,000.
Alright, I'm done now.
To make up for the ruined party, he decides to run out and buy the office an entire box worth of vodka, which then upsets Angela, who planned the party out very differently. Jim talks to Pam at her desk and realizes that she traded the iPod to get Jim's teapot back. Jim prompts her to open it and Pam is amused with all the little trinkets inside. While Pam was distracted, Jim secretly slips his handwritten card back into his pocket. The party takes a turn for the better and the night ends well. Michael has planned a leadership conference to take place on a cruise. However, the captain of the ship has other more fun ideas for the passengers on the ship. While the party gets rowdy, Pam and Jim go up to the deck to just get away from the noise. Here we see Jim really struggle to say what he really feels about Pam, but it never happens. While playing a game of Who'd You Save, Jim musters up the courage to finally go back and confess to Pam. However, before he can reach her, Roy gets inspired by Captain Jack's story and decides to announce to the entire cabin that he wants to commit to marrying Pam.
June 10th. Come on, let's do it.
Which leaves Jim dejected and he ends up breaking up with Katie. Michael attempts to give a motivational speech involving a capsizing analogy, which scares some passengers into actually going overboard. This gets him evicted into the top deck and tied up. Jim opens up to Michael about his feelings for Pam and Michael tells him to never ever give up on her.
She's engaged.
BFD, engaged ain't married. Never, ever, ever give up.
Michael burns his foot on a George Foreman grill and wants to be picked up by someone from the office. Dwight naturally rushes off in his car and slams into a pole, injuring himself.
Dwight.
Oh!
He brings Michael into the office and throughout the day, Michael is being extra fussy and whiny about his burnt foot. Dwight meanwhile is acting very strangely and being overly nice to Pam and other people in the office, which makes Jim suspicious. Michael gets mad that no one in the office seems to give him the obsessive attention due to his disability and angrily calls a meeting where he invites an actual disabled person. The guest speaker notes that something seems to be off with Dwight and soon after he collapses. Jim and Michael bring Dwight to the hospital and Pam gives a warm goodbye to the nice Dwight, knowing that once he gets cured, he's not gonna be that nice anymore. It's spring cleaning at Dunder, Mifflin in January and Oscar has called in sick. Michael and Dwight suspect that Oscar is malingering because it's Friday. Michael points Dwight to investigate the matter and of course he takes it way too seriously. Jim tells Michael that whatever he told him on the booze cruise about Pam was to be kept secret between them. Michael of course doesn't do this and takes every opportunity to talk about it.
What's 411? Any updates on the pay situation?
He also lets the secret slip to Toby while Angela and Kelly were there.
He's in love with a girl he works with who's engaged, so just cut me some slack.
Now the secret is out and everybody knows. Jim although takes this pretty well and goes to Pam to tell her about it. Jim admits that he did have a crush on her, but lies and says that it was all in the past. Pam is understanding but does have a look of disappointment when she leaves the break room. Michael, in one last attempt to make up for what he did, decides to have the brilliant idea to tell Pam that Jim's crush on her was as recent as the booze cruise. Michael, what are you doing? Pam doesn't say anything. Pam just got back from a vacation with Roy and they both seem to have grown more fondly of one another. Michael arrives at the office to find what is implied to be a massive pile of shit in the middle of his office. Everybody is disgusted and wonders who did it. Until Michael's carpet is replaced, Jim is forced to move into the back of the office with Kelly, who just won't stop talking.
Serious, my closet doors will not shut. So I don't understand why the closet engineer didn't think of it. Please, Jim, please, Jim, please.
Shut up! Shut up!
Near the end of the day, Michael begins to think that this was just a personal attack on him by one of his co-workers. That is, until a phone call by Packer comes through asking Michael if he found the package that he left him in his office.
Oh, that was Packer.
Before Jim leaves the office for the day, he notices that he has 7 messages on his machine, all from Pam throughout the day telling him how bored she was and how she wishes he would go back to his old desk. It's a women in the workplace day and Jan is having a little seminar with the women of the office. Michael of course can't help himself and tries to have a men-only seminar, much to the annoyance of Jan. Jan forces them to do their seminar somewhere else, so Michael decides to bring them to the warehouse, where the team are ecstatic to see them. P.S. That's sarcasm. Michael wants the 2 teams to bond over work, so they start unloading trucks, and Michael... Back upstairs, Jan asks each of the women what their dreams are, and Pam brings up that she always wanted to try being an artist or graphic designer. Jan mentions that Dunder Mifflin is actually offering a design program in New York and that she should consider doing it. The boys and the girls wrap up their individual conferences and Pam talks to Roy about the design program, a topic Roy seems not too fond of. Jim confronts Pam about not going for the program and she gets heated when Jim tells her that
You gotta take a chance on something sometime, Pam.
Back down at the warehouse, Michael buys pizza for everyone to sort of pacify them. The office goes back to normal and as Pam finishes taking a call, she looks at Jim as if remembering what he said to her. It is Valentine's Day and the first gift of the day is for Phyllis from
Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration.
Michael is traveling to New York for a corporate financial meeting. As the day goes along, Phyllis receives not 1, not 2, but 5 gifts from
Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration.
much to the annoyance of the others in the office who haven't gotten anything. Before the financial meeting begins, Michael again lets out that he slept with Jan to the other executives.
We hooked up and...
You hooked up with Jan?
During the meeting, Michael premieres a short film to the board instead of giving his branch's financial numbers. One thing leads to another and one of the executives blurt out that Michael slept with Jan. Jan lectures Michael on the seriousness of having sexual relations with a superior and her fear of getting fired because of it. Michael offers to defuse the situation by talking to the CFO. As Jim leaves for the day, Pam seems to be sad that Jim is leaving without her. As Michael and Jan say goodbye, Jan thanks him and gives him a little kiss. Dwight is the top salesman of the year at Dunder Mifflin Scranton and is supposed to make a speech at the annual sales convention. Michael tells him that it's probably going to be the biggest speech of his life, which makes him very nervous. Pam's wedding day is getting closer and she has to settle wedding stuff at the office. Jim is trying to avoid the wedding by planning a trip around the date. While at his desk, Jim manages to convince Dwight that he majored in public speaking in college. Dwight is very authoritative, so Jim convinces him to mimic the great speakers in history, mostly dictators.
You gotta wave your arms and you gotta pound your fists many times.
Okay, I didn't actually major in public speaking.
Both Michael and Dwight arrive at the convention and Dwight is called onto the stage but is frozen in fear. Michael runs up and covers for him until he musters up the courage to do it. Dwight gives a Hitler-esque speech and gets a rousing ovation from the audience.
Must never cede control of the motherland.
Back at the office, Jim tells Pam that he won't be able to make it to her wedding. It's bring your kid to work day at the office and Michael isn't really fond of having them around. Michael meets Sasha, Toby's kid, and he's surprised to learn that he's actually very good with them.
Next stop, Cook. Kabanga.
Melissa has a tiny crush on Ryan and asks him for his number, to which Stanley,
That little girl is a child. I don't want to see you
sniffing around her anymore this afternoon. Do you understand? Boy, you lost your mind. I'll help you find it. What you looking for? You might want to help that.
As the episode goes along, we see that Michael is actually quite the natural with the kid and is really hitting it off with them. So much so that Michael calls Toby into his office and genuinely asks if it's too late for him to have kids at his age. We end the episode with Jim leaving work early to go for a date he has with someone.
Love you.
And they do. Your parents love you very much.
It is Michael's birthday today and he of course is letting everybody know about it. Meanwhile, Kevin seems to be very anxious about something and we quickly find out that he's at risk of having skin cancer and he's just waiting on a diagnosis. Michael doesn't know anything about Kevin's situation and is only focused on getting everybody's attention on him. Dwight and Angela are having a meeting discussing finances and just look at the clip.
What about that meeting later? To discuss finances?
Yes, but don't expect any cookie.
What if I'm hungry?
No cookie.
Pam and Jim sneak out of the office to get some small gifts for Kevin and they both share a nice bonding moment. While Michael's party is happening, Kevin gets a call in the middle of it, much to Michael's annoyance. Angela tells Michael that nobody actually cares about his stupid birthday and finally reveals to him that Kevin might have skin cancer. Michael decides to cheer Kevin up by bringing him to a place completely unrelated to his birthday.
That should not be there.
I'll get someone to take it down.
No, it's alright. It's already up. Just leave it.
We find out that Michael is an exceptional ice skater. Kevin gets another call from his doctor.
It's negative.
We're gonna beat this, okay? Come here.
Dwight found a joint in the middle of the office parking lot and is now conducting a one-man investigation to find out who did it. He happens to be a volunteer sheriff, so apparently he can just do these things. He conducts interviews with every employee in the office and then orders urine testing for everyone in the next 24 hours. Michael, according to him,
I am so anti-drug that I am above suspicion in any way that involves suspicion or testing of any kind.
Meanwhile, Pam and Jim are playing a game where Jim is not allowed to talk until he buys Pam a can of Coke. The office vending machines are sold out, so Jim just has to remain silent the whole time, no matter the situation. The lady from the urine analysis lab is here to collect the urine tests, and we find out that Michael is the one that actually got high a few nights ago at an Alicia Keys concert. He secretly begs Dwight to swap his urine with his to fake the results. Dwight does so after much moral anguish and resigns as a volunteer sheriff. Michael passes the test and as a sort of reward decides to give Dwight the completely legitimate position.
You're an honorary volunteer corporal in charge of assisting all activities security.
Pam finally buys a Coke for Jim to buy off of her so he can talk again.
Hey.
And they spend the rest of the day just catching up on what happened. It's ID photo day at the office and everyone is spruced up for their photo.
What is on your face?
Michael hears some shouting in the conference room and sees Oscar venting angrily about something. Michael of course tries to intervene and finds out that Oscar has an issue with Angela's baby poster on the wall. Oscar hates it while Angela loves it. Toby tries to stop Michael but
never end up sending it.
What do you know about conflict resolution? Your answer to everything is to get divorced.
I can't believe you've done this.
So Michael tries to mediate their issue in the weirdest way possible.
Angela makes the poster into a t-shirt which Oscar wears. That way he can never see it, and whenever she looks at Oscar, she can see it.
This is brilliant.
Michael reports to Toby that he solved the conflict and notices a giant file of other complaints from other people in the office. He decides to announce every single complaint anyone has ever said about someone out loud in a twisted way of trying to solve the issues. He starts with complaints regarding Pam, with one of them being,
does she have to plan her wedding on office time? Shouldn't she do that at home?
Who else?
Toby lets it slip that all Dwight's complaints about Jim were never fully reported and he loses it.
Oh, no! No!
No, you calm down. Whose side is Toby on?
Whose side are you
Hey!
Dwight tries to force Jim to transfer to a new branch in Stanford, and Michael calls them into the conference room for mediation. Michael then goes through every single hilarious prank Jim has ever pulled on Dwight. Before the day ends, everyone is pretty much forced to take a group photo. While Pam gets heated with Angela thinking she filed the complaint about her, Jim reveals that he was the one that actually complained about her. We end the episode with Jim having a meeting with Jen in New York, presumably to ask about transferring him from Scranton to Stanford. The office warehouse is being turned into a makeshift casino to raise money for the Boy Scouts. When Michael asks Toby if he can invite an actual Boy Scout to receive the donation, he of course says no because there's gambling and alcohol involved, and we get another iconic scene.
Why are you the way that you are?
He said it! He said it!
Pam is deciding on which band she wants to play at her wedding, so Jim joins her in watching their audition tapes. They're surprised to find Kevin and his band Scrantonicity as one of the bands in for the running. Michael decides to invite his realtor, Carol, but also accidentally invites Jan. They both meet and immediately Michael starts being weird about it. Roy decides to leave early and Jim takes this chance to talk with Pam, presumably about his transfer. And after 22 episodes, Jim finally confesses his feelings to Pam.
I was just, I'm in love with you.
What?
Pam apologizes to him if she caused a misunderstanding between them and he walks away.
I'm sorry I misinterpreted our friendship.
As Jan leaves the event, we see her throw an overnight bag into the back, suggesting that she was looking to spend the night with Michael. We cut back to Pam at her desk phoning her mom about the whole situation until Jim walks in,
Listen, Jim.
kisses her, and we cut off season 2 from there. Before you guys go, thanks to whoever was watching my video. Do consider leaving a like and a subscribe if you liked the video, and I'll see you all in season 3. Bye everyone.